John's Long Box. I hope we're live. Here we go. This is King Size Annual Thor number 8. Look how beat up this is. I bought this off the newsstand when this came up. 1979. Jeez. I bought this, I think it was a 7-Eleven right near my house. Oh, man. And I read this comic over and over and over again. As you can see, it's a well-loved comic, well beat up comic. I know. For those of you who are longtime viewers, you'll know that I'm a Greek mythology freak, and at this point, I was a full-on Marvel zombie. So this was right up my alley. I read this over and over and over. It is just, you know, pretty beat up. Yeah, I just looked at the price. I went to mycomicshop.com and I ordered another copy because I know. This is good enough to read, but I got another copy. Hey, good morning, Marvin. Hey, how are you? I good to see you. I got the Edge comics. You know, rooting for you. Thank you for showing up. Happy Sunday to you too. And for those of you who do not know, Marvin Wynn is the creator of the Edge, a comic. I did a showcase on the Edge a couple of weeks back, and he's been a guest on my channel for my Wednesday chats. Good to see you, Marvin. Thank you for showing up. Hope everything looks good. Hope everything sounds good. So this this was like two of my obsessions. Well, three of my obsessions: superheroes, Marvel comics, and Greek mythology. You better believe I this comic was one I talked a few times. Hey, thumbs up. So I talked a few times about how I had a folder, and the folder was the Fantastic Four 159, the wonderful Rich Buckler folder of the Fantastic Four and the Inhumans, like in mid charge, and that was just like all my comics that I brought around to show to everybody. Brought up to school, they all got beat up. This is one of them. Oh my God, that I love this. Now another thing I wanted to talk about. Hey, good morning, Dr. Jones. Hey, Bucky, how you doing there? Bucky makes me laugh all the time. Bucky has his own channel, Bucky749. Did I say that number right? Where he talks about whatever the hell Bucky feels like talking about, right? I think that's fair to say. So, Marvin Wynn, uh, Marvin, if you could send me a direct message on Twitter, I'll. I'm trying to. I'm trying to be whatever a good guy to everybody. This drama going on the internet. I don't need to explain. Comic world drama is always going on. I'm trying to stay positive. So yeah, there we go. Uh, Focus. All right. So what are we talking about? Oh, I wanted to talk about this. This is Keith Pollard and Bob Layton, two amazing talents. Keith Pollard, I I didn't realize, but I was always a Keith Pollard fan. Back at this point when I was a kid, I didn't really pay attention to the names of the artists, unless you were John Byrne, unless you were George Perez. I didn't pay attention to your name, and I know that's mean to say, and I feel bad. But Keith Pollard, oh my God, was he great? I think he was drawing the regular comics, the regular Thor comics at this time, and amazing. I keep threatening. I keep promising to showcase more of those Thor comics, and now I really need to. Keith Pollard was amazing. I just fun. And Bob Layton. Bob Layton is everybody knows Bob Layton. Hey Fabio, how you doing? Yeah, you're absolutely right. Keith Pollard did. I think he did like a 40 issue run. I'm sure I'm wrong about the numbers, but that's what it seems like to me as a kid. But uh, I started collecting Thor when Walt Simonson was drawing it on his original run, and then shortly after it switched to I think John Buscema did a few fill issues, and then Keith Pollard, and oh my God, they're so good. And Bob Layton, everybody here knows Bob Layton, whether you realize it or not. Bob Layton, he drew Iron Man. So to me, Bob Layton is the consummate Iron Man artist. When you close your eyes and you think of Iron Man, it's Bob Layton, whether you realize or not. He is amazing, and he's going around the world right now. Enjoying his retirement. He's tweeting from various places all over the world. He's doing great. But look at this. It always bothered me that Zeus had red hair. I always pictured Zeus as a white haired guy, but I guess Marvel had to distinguish him from Odin in some ways. Here you go. My little coffee ad, Tim Hortons. My wife and I drove out to. There's a Tim Hortons by me, a big giant one. I just had to go replenish my can of coffee and use their disgustingly dirty bathroom. Never use the Patchogue Never use the Patchogue Tim Hortons bathroom. Oh my God, it was worse than like Penn Station. Focus. All right, so I always loved the Thunderbolts over here. I, I I have to say that Marvel Comics created my imagination, my imaginary look of how the Greek gods and the Norse gods looked. Maybe well, Zeus was a shape changer. So there is that. Bucky always makes me laugh. So up until I'm going to say up until like my 30s. Whenever I closed my eyes and I pictured the Greek gods or the Norse gods, I pictured the Marvel versions of them. You know what I mean? That's all I knew. It wasn't until I got really like into my college. Well, 30 is so I guess maybe my mid 20s until I got to college when I was I'm an ancient history major, so I started looking at actual Greek clothes and armor and fashions of the time that I started to change the way I picture these guys. But look at this. So, what's going on here? How could you not like this? Thor fighting Zeus and the Trojan War. So this is Roy Thomas telling the Marvel version of the Trojan War. So I was stalling for people to show up. I'm getting some engagement. So let's check this out. As always, oh my God, the Fun Factory ad. And if I may go on to my typical rant, whenever you see GC comics, for those of you who don't know, you put them in the plastic slab. This is the kind of stuff you lose. This is like, what? Did you watch Blood of Zeus? I don't know what that is. What is Blood of Zeus? Is it a movie? If I gotta check it out if it's a movie. But whenever we study history, I talked with Robert Geronimo of who does Blood Realm comics from Alterna Comics the other day, and he's a college professor, and we were talking about our college degrees, not to sound pretentious or anything like that, but that's what we were talking about, and we were talking about I have a degree in ancient history. And I feel like I don't use it too much anymore. And one of the things he got me thinking about is whenever we study history, we always seem to study the big events, the people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Uh, yes, I read the Thunderstrike comics. Yes, that was like, Marvel every once in a while tries to change it up, everything, change up the status quo, like make younger, hipper versions, and eventually they fail and they go back. But I kind of like Thunderstrike. He was one of them that I actually liked. He was like schlubby, working class hero Thor. I kind of like that because I'm a slubby working class hero guy. But so whenever we study history, we know the big names. We know the George Washingtons. We know the Napoleons and things like that. The villains, Hitler. But what we lose is we don't really tend to talk about the average person in the streets. And this to me, like when we slab comics, we're gonna see the covers. They're gonna get repurposed. They're gonna get put in omnibuses, and we're going to see the stories. We're going to see, but this is like the common man. This is the kind of stuff that's going to be forgotten about. Lately, Marvel and DC have been making facsimile issues, which I really, really think are cool, where they literally take everything, reprint it, but on better color, which I'm going to argue with because I like the old colors better, but I'm an old fart. Better paper, better colors, and they show the ads. The only real difference is it says facsimile issue and the price. But this is the kind of stuff that would be lost when you slab comics. So there you go. All right, look at this. I was about to say slab page. Look at this splash page. That's amazing. So let's look at the credits first before I talk about anything else before I forget. So this is supposed to be 14 years ago. The first annual told the soul-saggering story of Thor meeting Hercules. So this is after. So this is stories set in the past. So it's after Thor meets Hercules, but before the current storyline. So Marvel plays with time. That's cool. So we got Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas, what can I say about Roy Thomas that I haven't already said 80 bazillion times? Roy Thomas was one of the first new hires by Stan Lee. Yes, just because it's new doesn't always mean improved. You're absolutely right, Bucky. You're absolutely 100% right. So Roy Thomas, he was hired by Stan Lee, and he was like unofficially, officially, whatever you want to say, the first of the second generation of comic book people. Before Roy Thomas, everybody was like originally like Golden Age and thereabouts. And then Stan Lee hired Roy Thomas as he was like a 25-year-old school teacher, but who was very prolific letter writer, a letter hack as we called it. And I think that he is a walking, living encyclopedia of all things comic book. I love Roy Thomas. He became the editor in chief of Marvel Comics for a while. My only criticism of Roy Thomas, hey, Ricardo, I agree with you, is sometimes he gets a little pedantic with crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Like the Crisis on Infinite Earths messed up him, and he just made comics like young all stars over at DC to like fix continuity. You know, so sometimes like he made a Submariner comic. The whole purpose of the comic was to explain why the Golden Age Submariner wore black shorts and the modern, Silver Age and onward wore green shorts. Does it really matter? He changed his shorts. He changed his costume. But there was a whole story about that. Things like that. And that was in the Invaders. But I love Roy Thomas. John Buscema. What can I say about John Buscema? Oh my God. Yeah, Roy Thomas is phenomenal. John Buscema, to me, as much as I'm a Jack Kirby fanatic, I love Jack Kirby. I revere Jack Kirby. He is the ultimate comic book artist, if you ask me. As I take another sip of coffee, I still have to say that when I close my eyes and I think of Marvel Comics like as a daydream, like when I'm half asleep on commuting to work, I still see John Buscema's artwork. Like John Buscema is Jack Kirby is Marvel Comics. Paradoxically, John Buscema is also Marvel Comics. And I told this story a few times. At this point, I didn't like Jack Kirby's artwork. Jack Kirby's artwork was old-fashioned. It was old fogey artwork to me. This was Marvel Comics, John Buscema. And of course, you all know how I feel about Jack Kirby. It wasn't until I started working in a comic book store in the mid-'80s that like the fans and the old-timers really, the way they talked about Jack Kirby, I started to feel like I was a bad comic book fan if I didn't like Jack Kirby. So I just told myself I liked Jack Kirby. And then later on, I started to respect Jack Kirby. And then in my 20s, I just fell in love with Jack Kirby. It was like a growth curve, But I have to say, John Buscema was Marvel Comics. It still is. When I close my eyes and I think Marvel Comics, look back at my childhood reading comics, this was John Buscema's time. And Tony DeZunga, if I remember correctly, have you heard about the comic series Junkyard Joe? Yeah, did we just talk about it? That's Jeff Johns. I always say Jeff Jones. Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Yeah, that was supposed to. He has to do a comic about a GI robot over at DC, and they said no. So he made up his own character, and now he's got his own character. When Jeff Johns says he wants to use your character, you say yes. Jack Kirby and Roy Thomas were enemies? If so, that's the first I'm hearing about it. I don't know, and that kind of hurts my heart to think about it. I don't know. I don't know of any of Jack Kirby illustrated Roy Thomas stories. I don't know. Do you have any information? No one has surpassed Buscema. I'm not going to say who's better, Jack Kirby or Sal Buscema. That's like a they are the two-headed giant of comic books. Like I picture this just behemoth with two heads looking in either direction, ready to conquer all. What was I saying? I forget what I was even saying now. I got distracted. I forget. But that's. Oh yeah. I forget. Well, the thoughts are lost into the vapors. Oh, Tony DeZunga. That's what I was saying. I could be wrong, but I think he was Filipino and lived in the Philippines and was a prolific artist and inker. I'm more familiar with him as an inker. Arthur Tripp is here. Welcome to the coffee break at History of Our Hobby. Mr. Thomas and Mr. Bales were the godfather of fandom. Yes. For those of you who don't know what Arthur's talking about, Roy Thomas started, and Mr. Bales, I don't know his first name, they started a magazine, a fanzine called Alter Ego. And I think because of that, I back in the way back days, the olden days, they mimeographed it. I think it was even before Xerox, and they just sold it and organized a fan community, and through that, and the letter writing got Roy Thomas was kind of like a big deal in comic books before he was even in comic books. You know what I mean? No. I imagine Jack Kirby as Thor fighting Roy Thomas. I don't know. Maybe Arthur knows. Arthur, do you know? Did Roy? Was there any enmity between Roy Thomas and Jack Kirby? Because if so, this is the first time hearing about it. All right, so here we got. Look at this splash page, and Joe Rosen, letterer, and Jim Shooter. What does that say? Consulting editor, perhaps the most Titanic. Okay, and then the rest is like flourish. So what do we got here? Oh, plot by Don and Maggie Thompson. Those of you who do not know, Don and Maggie Thompson, they had a comic book newspaper called the Comic Buyer's Guide, which I just obsessively devoured I forget what it was once a week. And I had a stack of them. And they look like regular newspapers. I had a stack of them in my bedroom as a kid. And they uh, they just accumulated a big pile. And I remember there was like an extremely cold winter and oil prices to heat the house were was getting skyrocket. So my father would put logs on the fireplace just to help heat the house. And he took all thinking they were just newspapers. So there goes my whole collection of like I had like a near complete of Comic Buyer's Guide, but anyway, anything to help the house, I guess. I lived there. I enjoyed the heat. So here we got Loki and Thor. They're fighting the giants of Jotunheim, and look at that, as only John Buscema could draw. I always liked the way he drew the teeth. And we got, action, suspense, Thor just being Thor, Fruman and smashing. Loki's being a sneaky. I always loved that. Just blast coming out of his hammer. Just blasted these things. And where's Loki? Loki's like, oh, I was doing stuff that you couldn't tell. And now, he's recalling his battle with Hercules in annual #1. I should showcase that. And he's like, look, a cave. And Thor's like, I ain't going in any cave. Caves are nothing but trouble. Caves are always enough. We've played enough Dungeons and Dragons to know that there's monsters in that cave. And Loki's like, let's check out this cave. We got this ad over here. Be a draftsman. Sell some grit. I always thought it would be funny, like, to make up a story where like grit held the secrets of the universe. Like if you read grit and did follow the exercises, you get like the power cosmic or become like a super. But nobody ever did because nobody ever bought it. Oh, Roy. Okay, Roy hated to be called kid by Jack Kirby. Okay, I could see that. Yeah, because there was a significant age difference. Okay, so that makes sense. You know what? Jack Kirby could call me whatever he wanted. All right, and then we got this Professor Sneer. You want to know why people revere the original Captain Marvel? Well, the original Marvel Captain Marvel, because he liked Twinkies. And we all know Twinkies are delicious. He wasn't one of these fruit pie wielding superheroes. No, he was a delicious, delicious Twinkie wielder. Twinkie wielder is a term. So now Thor's going through this cave. He goes into the cave, and you already know that something's up because outside it was a solid wall. Inside there's a portal to Narnia or whatever. Just an old troop in the mists. He's walking through the mists. Meets the Queen Frost. No, is that from Spider-Man: The Amazing Friends? It seems like every time I turned that on, it was the Swarm episode. So, I remember obsessively watching that cartoon as a kid, but I do not remember that episode. I started rewatching it on Netflix, and man, I just couldn't get through more. And I started watching Cadillacs and Dinosaurs cartoon. I didn't even know there was a cartoon, and now it's gone, and I can only find the Spanish version. So I don't speak Spanish. So here he comes out and he finds this kid fighting a boar. And Thor is just smasheroonie, beats the boar, and they're talking. Now, one of Thor's lesser known powers, is that he can speak all languages. It's almost like a Twinkies killed Captain Marvel. I have the graphic novel. That would be funny. Yeah, so he had like blood cancer. What if it was diabetes? Captain Marvel killed by diabetes. That's funny. One of Thor's lesser known powers is he doesn't really speak in Shakespearean English. He speaks in whatever Asgardian language that he speaks. We just hear it like that. That's like one of his god powers is he has like a continual aura of like tongues. So Thor could speak any language, or more appropriately, he speaks like the god tongue, and everybody hears it in their language. So he hears this boy, and they're talking. So that's why Thor's got that like ubiquitous Doctor Who ability of speaking in all languages. And he takes the boar and he's carrying it. And now he's like, who are you? And Thor's like, I don't remember. So the mists robbed him of all memory. And then look, see, we got this black border, that indicates a change in time. So now we're getting the history of the Trojan War. And if I, I, I had a copy. I talk about this a lot. There was this book, Edith Hamilton's Mythology. It was a little book, like about this big, and it was hardcover, and it was just in my bedroom. So all I could think of was one of my two older brothers must have got it, and it was just always there. It was one of those things that was just in my room. Besides the scary clown, there was the Edith Hamilton's Mythology book that was always in my room. And I was obsessed. That was one of the books that I learned to read with. It was comic books and Edith Hamilton's Mythology that taught me to read. And I would attempt to read that book over and over and over again until I pretty much have it memorized. So they're talking about the Trojan War over here. So here's King Menelaus and Helen of Troy. They're married, and I always thought it's funny that they make her blonde and everything like that. When she's a Mediterranean Greek, more likely she had black hair. I showcased. I showcased. Why can't I think of the comp? It was called Age of Bronze by Eric Schanauer. It was Image Comics. I got like 2 views on it, but it was it's a retelling or painstakingly researched telling of the Trojan War. And I think it went to like 36 issues and it stopped selling too well, and now he's finishing it online, which means I can't finish it because I can't read comic books online. But it is wonderful. Wonderful. And it is notes in the back. I'll put a link to that in this because it is as close to history as you're going to get of the Trojan War. That would make a wonderful HBO or Netflix series. I love that. I can't recommend that series enough. And he drew what Helen of Troy most likely looked like. And Helen, let's just say she didn't look like that. And here we got, Paris and all these, they're smitten, they're talking. So now we got all the famous kings. So this is Odysseus, who's always my favorite. I always liked Odysseus. Achilles, and I like Achilles supposed to be like a young, brash young guy. You know what I mean? They make him look like the stoic, older, wiser king when he's not supposed to be. He was supposed to be like 19 years old at this point, to the point where his mother hid Achilles with among women. She dressed him up as a young girl because he was like so young that he had like the blush of youth, as they described it, that he could, with a little bit of makeup, he could pass for a girl. So when the kings came around looking for Achilles, they looked right at him and thought he was a girl. So there you go. Menelaus, Agamemnon. I've always loved that name, Agamemnon. Diomedes of Argos, among others. And then they go sailing off. And this, I remember, freaked me out as a kid, but it's the truth. The sails in these Greek ships were painted bright colors. We always see them as just white, or at least I always picture them as just white. But they painted them, purple and orange and coat of arms of their city states. How majestic must that have looked? And then they get to Troy. Now, they're glossing over a lot of stuff because it's just a comic book that they don't have room for all of. But if you read the Homer, or if you, I can't recommend Eric Schanauer's Age of Bronze. It's collected into like 3 volumes, so it's easy to pick up. And I think he's going to just continue in graphic novel format when he has the individuals, because he's putting individual issues in his website, and then I think he's going to collectible. So I'll have to get the graphic novels to finish the story. But anyway, there was like, took years to get to this point with all the minor battles and happenstance. Just such an epic story. So this is the Great Walls of Troy. And of course, we have chaos, ensues. Look at this wonderful John Buscema battling, the coloring. This is just typical old school coloring. This guy doesn't matter. The focus is on Achilles going off. And now we have the camps, they're putting the walls over here. And the battle, this is been going on for 10 years. So by the time Thor shows up and here's Cassandra saying, we're going to die, that's the origin of, don't be a Cassandra. A Cassandra is a woman, or anybody really, who tells you exactly what's going to happen and nobody believes. So here we have the death of Proclus. I could never say his name right. Proclus is Hector going around killing everybody. Hector is the great hero on the Trojan side. And Achilles is pissed off. He leaves because his buddy Proclus was killed, and he's telling him all this. And who is this? This is Aeneas. So Thor is going inside the city of Troy, and he's, you know, throwing down the boar, and helping him out. So Thor, without realizing it, has been recruited to the Trojan side, right? And he's being told that the Greeks are the bad guys. Now, are the Greeks the bad guys? I don't know. Are the Greeks the good guys? I don't know. That's one of the great things about the Trojan War is the more you read about either one, you realize it's a lot of shades of gray. And I never believed that Helen was abducted. Helen left. Helen left. She took off. She was supposed to be young. She didn't want to marry an older guy. She took off with young, handsome, hot Paris. More coffee. That's my take. Warriors of the Shadow Realm. I was fascinated by this is the comic that I've been. This is weird. Look at my hands. They're all beat up from work. Comic is really weird because I was fascinated by this comic and yet I never read it. I just bought it now. There was a couple of like floppy comics that had it, and I read those out of order. But then there was a Marvel Supersized Specials that I just got now, and they're in the stack of comics right over here. They're right there. They're in there, and I haven't read them yet. And I bought them. I couldn't wait to read them, and I have yet to read them. So I forgot about them. That's what I do. I buy too many comics and I forget about them. So now let's see all this. I'll pull them to the top. Here we got. Anybody remember this? The Thing. This is a Thing cartoon on Hanna-Barbera's Thing. It was a teenager. He put the rings together. Thing ring, do your thing. Have you read the graphic novel Astonishing Times? No, what is that? Tell me more about it, Bucky. So here's Thor and Aeneas. I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong, but it's going to make me giggle. And he's meeting everybody. There's Helen, meeting Hector, and all the guys are all talking. And now this is the great battle between Hector and even as Aeneas speaks, those at the Spartans. So this is Hector fighting Menelaus. They're going to settle this, after 10 years of fighting. Nobody. It's not victory. And look at this battle. The sword breaks. They're just, and what does he do? Menelaus is just being disrespectful to the body of Hector. He's dragging him around. I remember in the comics, he dragged him around on his chariot around the city. And he's like, I can't believe they do this. So Thor is just like, these Greeks are barbarians. And here comes Aphrodite flying down from the sky. And she undoes his helmet. So he's just dragging it. He turns around and she takes the body under her veil and it disappears. Like, where did he go? And he's like, Thor, but Thor can see it because he's a god. But, I don't know if I mentioned this. Thor has amnesia now. Those mists have obscured, the plot mists have robbed him of his identity. And, what's going on? This was blasphemous. He's like, there's a King Priam who's supposed to be an older man. Not that's like very old, tough guy. They're all like, what's going on? What's going on? Aphrodite. I just love, and Thor could see her. He's like, can't you see what's going on? This battle is beyond just men fighting, and he summons and he recalls himself, I'm Thor, the god of thunder, which is funny because why didn't Homer talk about Thor, the god of thunder in the comics? Fred and Barney meet the Thing. Yes. Fred and Barney meet the Thing. I just have to laugh because at this point I'm picturing like 50-year-old men coming up with like cartoon ideas that little kid, like the most like detached, unhip people. Kids like Fred Barney Thing, like the Thing's made of rocks. Fred Barney are always with rocks. Fred Barney meet the Thing. So now he's flying up to chase her, and he's like, where did that guy go? And here we got Zeus. I always loved when they depicted the Greek gods in Marvel Comics. So we got Zeus. That's Athena. A very poor rendition of Athena. Athena's supposed to be the gray lady. She has black hair, gray eyes, pale white skin. There's Dionysus. It's funny that these, I think they have the Roman names. So that's Bacchus. Bacchus is always considered like a big fat guy, but Dionysus, I always picture Dionysus to be like Jim Morrison. Just like young and mysterious and good looking. I'm actually doing a comic book script about the rise of Dionysus. Focus. And there's Juno, who's always portrayed as a bad guy, but you know what? Juno, you kind of got a point there when your husband's going around, banging everything in the shape of a duck. A lot of weird stuff going on in Greek mythology. And there's Ares over here. And now Athena's showing up, like Aphrodite showing up and saying, he's like, I told everybody We're staying out of this battle. We're staying out of this battle. We're just going to watch this. This is Netflix for Zeus. We're just going to watch this fight. Stay out of the battle. And he just explodes a building. Boom, boom. And Thor's like, wow, you remind me of my father. He's like, you're a troublemaker. You fought my son. Stay out of this. Now, keep in mind this is in the past, so he met Hercules. Even he met Hercules during the mythology times. So he's telling Thor, you troublemaking barbarian Norseman, stay out of this. So she's like, what's going on? This is my opportunity. Thor's distracted. So the gods, this is like the original Civil War. I just thought of that. Okay, Bucky says, Astonishing Times, a graphic novel that was released by Comixology. It's the story of a world that has superheroes, but people just don't care about heroes anymore. That sounds interesting. But unless it's a floppy comic, I'll be honest, I'm not going to read it. I have no interest in reading comic books on a computer screen. So, sorry to people that do that. No offense, but that's the way I am. Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Good talk. For those of you who don't know, Jeff and I just talked last Wednesday. We showed his back issue bonanza. So this was the original Civil War because the power Zeus declared we are staying neutral in this fight, but camps arise. Notably, Athena is on the side of the Greeks, Poseidon is on the side of the Greeks, and Aphrodite is on the side of the Trojans. Why? Because her son, her son Paris is there. Paris is the son of Aphrodite, and Juno, or Hera, she is on the side of the Greeks because of Argos. That's her holy city. So the gods themselves are divided, and Ares just wants there to be troubles. Ares is like the Loki. Here we got this ad that drove me nuts. Comic book treasury, and now we got, she's talking about Athena's going, I shall save Menelaus at the last moment, but there will be war between the. So right now there's a ceasefire. So she's going to save, as the archer's going to shoot Menelaus, and Thor's just like yelling and screaming. He's showing off his power, by the hecatombs of Hercules. I don't know what that means, but there we go. They're yelling and screaming. Just look at this. So the Greeks are down there yelling up the wall, and they're like, your father smells of elderberries, and mother was a hamster, and the battle begins anew. Why do the Trojans, this just shows you, like, they don't know the way war works, they didn't know strategy. Why would the Trojans open up the door and come out and fight? Just stay up there and throw catapults, use catapults, dump oil, there's no need to risk, but, don't even get me started on the last season of Game of Thrones. And Thor's just witnessing this carnage. Like, and the funny thing is Thor is the barbarian, right? Thor is the what's the word? The uncivilized brute of the North, and he's disgusted by this mindless battle, because, as Thor says somewhere, and I'm not going to dig it up, when the Vikings went to war, of course he's sympathetic to the Vikings. This is the victors write the history. We were going because we couldn't farm. We had limited resources, but we needed to survive. So we did it for survival. This is just like, for a woman that doesn't even love you. But for those of you who don't know, Helen was the most beautiful woman in the Hellenistic world, the Greek world, and all the kings of Greece wanted to marry her, and they were going to go to war about that. And in order to solve the conflict, they agreed whoever marries her becomes the High King of Greece, and all the rest swear fealty. And they realized that the infighting would destroy Greece, so they swore this sacred oath. And oaths, in all of these epic stories are binding. Menelaus won. He became the great king, and then they made an oath to protect the marriage and protect the alliance. So Paris came and violated the oath. So all the other Greeks are honor bound to defend this. So there you go. They have to do this because of the gods and oath powers. All right. So now he's about to be stabbed, and Athena is protecting her beloved Odysseus. She likes Odysseus. All the gods have their favorites. So she's whispering in her ear, and just takes out. So they even say this in the Iliad. that they would have a charioteer, a person who drove the chariot, and then the actual warrior would be in the chariot throwing spears, which just showed you that even because here I'm going to get a little academic on you. By the time Homer wrote well, he never wrote it, but by the time codified, whatever you want to say, they were far away. So this is classical Greek talking about ancient Greece. So this is two different civilizations for all intents and purposes. Ancient Greece, like the linear B language, we can't even interpret it yet. So it was different. So here we got the classic Greeks reading linear B or hearing these stories, and the heroes were like of a different world. So of course they elevated them, and at this point the classic Greeks were using hoplites. So what they did was they would, we've all seen the movie Sparta. They would line up like a football line, two line, and they would have the shields, and they would literally just push into each other, and then they would have the spears, and they would just take the spears overhand and stab each other in the faces. So it became like a matter of endurance, and anybody could be a warrior. The reason why the Spartans were good at it, because if you were involved in that phalanx warfare, as it was called, you were halfway protected by your buddy's shield and halfway protected by your shield. So mentally, you would veer to the right to cover yourself by your buddy's, by your cohort's shield. And so all troops, all these lines would gradually move to the right, and then the other guys would move to the right, and that would break the lines. Now, the Spartans, they were trained in endurance, so they could do it longer, but they were drilled not to veer. They would go straight. So they always had the advantage. They would end up breaking the lines of whoever they fought just through discipline of this natural desire to cover up your body by, so the hoplite was three, the hoplon was the name of the shield. Hoplite was the shield bearer. That's where the word came from. And they were 3 feet in diameter. So they were huge, and they were designed to protect you and protect the people on your flanks. And that was just subconscious. You would push yourself under the shield of the person to your right, and you would veer that way. But the Spartans continued straight, and that's how that was their secret of victory. That, and the fact that they trained from 8 years old on to fight, so that they were in physically the best shape, and then they were psychologically conditioned not to instinctively try to cover up their vital organs by their partner's shield. And that's how the Spartans dominated. Now, because the Greeks, they were Athens, they were wine merchants. They were shepherds. They were anything. We seen that. How many? What do you do for a living? I'm a clair. I'm a cooper. I'm a this. And what do we do for a living? And they all hoo ha. Okay, so let's get back to this. So what the chariots were used for was they would just in the ancient world, you would get on your chariot and you would just it was pulled by ponies. The modern horse wasn't even developed yet. Alexander the Great conquered the world on ponies. They were small, and they would have the ponies pull the chariots straight at the enemy and just cause the enemy to break ranks. That's what you did. That's what you did, and then you would have bow and arrows and shoot, or spears and stab, and you just chase them around. In Homer, they were like taxis for so you just ride out your chariot and then hop off in it and attack everybody. You know what I mean? That's even Homer, as ancient as he was writing about older times, a different civilization. So there you go. So he's about to get smashed. This is Ajax, the second most powerful member of the Greeks. I think he was like the son of Poseidon or Ares, and he's just throwing boulders around, smashing things. And here comes Aphrodite. Aphrodite's protecting Hector, and here comes I think it's Menelaus, and I love this. She's just protecting him, and he stabs her in the hand, and she just screams. And remember, Aphrodite and Ares are married at this point. Love and war. And she's like, avenge me. And he's like, be gone, woman, I'm enjoying the battle. But he has to, you gotta listen to your wife. So Ares is gonna join. And here Thor is protecting the Trojans, just smashes their thing. you know, you remember that, right? When high school, when you read the Aeneid and in the Iliad, Thor coming in and smashing everybody's weapons. That was my favorite part. So he's like, I don't know who you are. He's just smashing and bashing. He's like, you're unbelievable. You must be related to the gods. And he just flies off with Paris, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. This is getting ridiculous. Zeus is getting pissed. Like we can't have Thor fighting, and she's like, what is this going on? You said to remain neutral, and yet we got foreign gods invading, and that she's shaming Zeus. Athena is always the one to be able to like talk Zeus into rationality, and that's what Athena is supposed to be. Zeus seduced Metis. Metis was a foreign goddess of wisdom and intelligence, and he was seducing her, and he was like, I could shape change. And she's like, I could shape change too. He's like, oh yeah, could you turn into this? And he would turn into a dragon. She's like, I'd turn into a dragon. Could you turn into this? And then she's like, oh yeah, I could turn into this. He's like, can you turn into a fly? And Metis was like, of course I could turn into a fly. And she transformed into a fly, and Zeus grabbed her and ate her. Bloop. And there you go. The Metis was dead. But he had a headache, and it was just his head was bulging. I always picture like his head was getting deformed and just beaten up, misshapen headache, and he couldn't stand it anymore. And he called to Hephaestus, the smith god. He's like, help me, help me. And Hephaestus hits Zeus in the face with an axe or a pick or whatever it was, and splits Zeus's skull open, and boom, out comes Athena, fully formed. So, if you read Robert Graves, that just means that there was a local tribe that had a local deity named Metis, and through a conquest or intermingling or whatever attack, Zeus absorbed that religion, but they still had the statues over time, and those statues became Greek, became Athena. So there you go. Yeah. Don't forget the Romans' adoption of the Greek religion just changed. Yeah, yeah. The Romans and the Greeks are you know, the the original in Rome, they had the Tuscan religions, which were very barbaric, and it was funny because it was a matriarchal society, and it was very, so whenever people were like, if women ruled the world, if women ruled the world, it would be like Etrusca, which invented gladiatorial combat. Don't those who don't know history say the silliest things. But anyway, we got Thor just vrooming over here and smashing everything, and now we finally got Ares is joining the battle. Ares is joining the battle. Athena is joining the battle. She's just blasting people. So Ares is joining the battle on the Trojan side because his wife nagged him, and he's like, all right, woman, as long as I get to fight. So he is basically like taking over, like possessing this body over here, and she's like, that's not fair. Oh no, I'm wrong. That happens later. So Ares is gonna go fight Diomedes, who's the king of Argos, which is not Argos, no, Odysseus. She likes crafty Odysseus. She's smart. I'm getting all the names mixed up. Hera likes Diomedes of Argos, so he's gonna fight him. He can't win. But Athena guides his hand with magic bolts, and he stabs Ares right in the chest. And Ares screams louder than, what does he say now? Like louder than 10,000 men? Yeah, louder than 10,000 men. I can remember that from 1979. Does the stricken war god bellow? And for those who cause war are not always among the bravest. So it's a little commentary there. The biggest troublemakers aren't always the bravest. And Thor is just like whipping everything, causing havoc. Just look at this job. You see my artwork. I always wanted this. Did anybody ever get this? Arthur, did you ever get this? Women are what? Beautiful? I think women are beautiful. And here we got Paris and Helen just watching this, and she's just like, I'm causing all this, and I'm feeling a little bit guilty. You should. And, well, should she? I thought she was supposed to be like a little girl who was abducted. Well, she was married off by her father to Menelaus, who was older, and young hot Paris, daughter, son of the love god, came and seduced her. I don't know. I love the way they portray Paris in that Age of Bronze comic. You really should check it out. I'll put a link in the description. So Zeus now is like, he's getting lectured by the two women who always lecture him. Hera, or Juno, Athena, Pallas Athena, Shining Athena. And Athena, I always thought that Athena was Zeus's favorite. So, and being the goddess of wisdom and restraint and combat. So I always thought of her as like the strategic god, whereas Ares is like the bloodthirsty god. So I always picture like Ares is like the more primitive, barbaric, destructive war, where she is like war in, that solves problems. But there you go. And she's like, I can't believe you're doing this. You're letting the barbarian gods interfere. So Zeus is like, oh yeah, and boom, he just throws lightning down, and here it is. That's what we've all been waiting for. Zeus challenges Thor, and he transports them to some faraway mountain, and it's just a storm over here. So now we got two primeval storm gods just ready to battle it out. That's what we all paid the price of admission for. And Thor's just like, yeah. And I love this. He just calls down the lightning, and blasts him. Look at that. This is comic books, guys. This is it. What else do you want? I don't need movies. I could. I'm not going to laugh, but I will withstand the death of Disney. I could withstand, I say there's only 3 Star Wars movies, and it doesn't bother me. Why? Because I could go back to these comic books and look at that panel. Look, are you guys with me? Was this action in your head? Like, let's go back. Let's go back. Gotta lick my fingers. So Zeus pulls them to this mountain. Whoop, boom, they're right there. Thor rages, and Zeus is just like, shut up, you whelp. And he just pulls down the lightning and throws it at him. Boom! That was in motion in my head. That was animated in my head. And Zeus is lecturing him. So he's like, oh, God, throws the hammer, and look at that. Oh, my God, look at that. Look at that. Zeus stops the hammer. This is 1979. Who stopped the hammer before? Zeus. So he stops it. It doesn't hit him, but he couldn't hold it for long, and he pulls it off. He's like, "Oh my God, this is a battle of another level." So now they're throwing lightning at each other. He's blocking the lightning, and they're looking at this mountain. And here we got the mortals. Like, what is going on? What is going on? And Thor is raging, throwing rocks at Zeus. Oh my God, Zeus is just exploding, zapped and charge it, and look at that. Now they're into fisticuffs, pure fisticuffs over here. And I love this. This is one of the things that makes me laugh when people don't talk like that in battle. You know what? People also don't fly and shoot laser beams. People talk in battle. People, comic book people talk in battle because comic book time is funny. Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics made that absolutely clear, that time changes within a panel. So over here happens before here, it happens before here, which implies that this happens last. And we all understand that language of time. And Fabio is an excellent comic book creator. Maybe you could back me up about this, but time is a wonky construct within comic books, and it's something you just have to instinctively understand. Okay, I saw a couple of comments, but I was on a rant. Okay. Jeff, do I consider Thor to be the most powerful of the Marvel heroes? Not just me, but Stan Lee said he wanted to make the most powerful superhero of all because he wanted to compete with Superman, which is why he has the red cape. So Stan Lee made Thor to be the most powerful of the Marvel heroes. But of course, power creep happens, and let's be realistic. Sometimes things change to fit the story. But yes, I think Thor of the superheroes. Now, does that mean he's the most powerful character? No, because Odin, Zeus, Galactus. But Thor is supposed to be like, if this makes sense, the run-of-the-mill superheroes. Yes, Thor is supposed to be the most powerful. And I think, and John Byrne said the specialist is the best. And I agree with that's the John Byrne principle, as I call that. Meaning, in DC, Flash, his only power is speed, so he's the fastest. He's faster than Superman. Batman is the greatest detective, so he's the best detective. And I will say in Marvel, Reed Richards is the scientist. He's the smartest, and Thor is the greatest warrior. So he's just the greatest all around combat. But Hulk is the strongest. So there you go. So Fabio says pure clear action. He didn't need double page spreads and it feels yes. Absolutely, Fabio. I take it you're a John Buscema fan. Yeah, how could you not be? How could again, Fabio Aiello is he's the creator of Horace H. I always want to say Harding. Horace H. Hoover issue number 1 came out, and I'm already obsessed with the comic book. Can't wait for number 2. Pick it up. He was on my channel too. Full disclosure. Look at this fight now. Zeus has enough. He just smashes him down into the rocks. Thor's beaten, you know. But Izzy throws the rocks at him. But look at his face. Look at his face over here. Thor's struggling, as he should, fighting Zeus. You know, and look at this battle just going on over here. Just raging battle. And then we got a commercial break. You know, commercial break, conventions. This horrible gum that you put it in your mouth, like, oh my God, this is delicious. Oh, it ran out of flavor. And look at this picture while I wet my whistle with some delicious Tim Hortons coffee. Bucky, I consider Odin the most powerful Marvel hero. Yes, but I don't consider Odin a superhero. Odin is Odin. He's the leader of the gods. Odin is there to fulfill the story of Thor. So he's not, he's, you know, as weird as this sounds, Odin's the NPC in Thor's story. Thor's the superhero. And I agree with you. But if does my logic make sense? And of course, this is my logic. You know, like Odin has to be more powerful. Otherwise, there's no purpose to him. But Odin is not the superhero. Thor is the superhero. So there you go. So Thor is the most powerful superhero, even though Odin's more powerful. Does that make sense? So they're watching. They're like, oh my God, this is getting out of hand. So we got, you know, we got Apollo over there who hasn't said a word. We got Athena. We got Aphrodite. We got Ares. They're like, oh my God, you know, this, first off, they're like, this is what the barbarian gods are like this, you know, this is like not their leader. The leader of their clan is Odin, and Odin's son is going against the most powerful being of the Greeks. So they're in awe of that. They're also in awe of, man, Zeus is going to be pissed. Either way, he's going to come back angry, or, you know, if he comes back victorious, he's going to be like enraged. If to punish, because they shamed him into going to fight, so that ain't going to be good. Or if he loses, oh my God, could you imagine? And look at Thor. Look at Thor's, just you know, panic, rage, and now because of that, I always pictured like their cosmic emanations are just causing like violence and waves of destructive. So the battle is raging, and keep in mind now, this is months going by. So this is the last year of the Roman of the Trojan War. So Zeus and Thor are up on that mountaintop fighting for weeks. You know, it's epic. And here's the battle going on. And here we got Paris. He's going to shoot Achilles. Boom. Right in the heel. Right in the heel. Achilles gets shot in the heel. And I think it was Aphrodite whispered into his ear to shoot in the heel. Now, why does Achilles have an Achilles heel? Well, Achilles' mother was one of the Nereids, I think, one of the daughters of Poseidon. So his grandfather was Poseidon. I forget her name. That's going to bother me, but so I won't say it because I'll probably say the wrong name. But she was an overprotective mother. She was and she took him by the heel. She dipped him into the river Styx. Think, and you know, so he has like an invulnerable skin. So I always think it's funny that he wears armor, but whatever. So he's totally invulnerable, except for his heel, because that's where his mother held him when she dipped him into the river Styx. So he not only is he undefeatable, he can't, you know, his flesh can't be penetrated. She still was overprotective and didn't want him to fight, and dressed him up as a girl and hid him among like the handmaidens. You know what I mean? What an overprotective mom. And he was embarrassed. He's like, Mom, you know, I want to go fight. So, you know, he got shot in the heel by a poison arrow. You know, and then Hector gets shot by I think it's Odysseus. He gets taken out, and Zeus and Thor are just fine. This is Roy Thomas, who's always fixing continuity. This is his way of explaining why when Zeus wanted everything to everybody to stay neutral, why in the last year did it get so crazy? You know, so there you go. This is a good Marvel Comics way of explaining this. And Zeus is just admonishing him, like, how dare you? I don't get involved. We have a treaty, you know. And he's like, at this point, he's like, you have defeated me. You're mighty, you're powerful, but I'm not giving up. And he's just like, what? Be the what's he saying what to? He goes, what is this? If not for Aeneas' sake do I fight now, but for the honor of Asgard itself. If thou canst defeat the blood son of Odin, thus wilt thou Thou wilt thou not ere long lead thine own Olympians against the realm eternal itself. Then might the immortals of Olympus join the forces with the hated hordes of Hela, and grim grey Ragnarok shall fall over the midnight sun ere it is written. So he's saying, if I can't defeat you, what's to stop you from joining Hela and joining the forces of Ragnarok? And he's like, what? He's like, that is that the cause of this madness? Then know this. And then he stops. He goes, your father and I have sworn an oath, not to interfere with each other. We will never join with Hela. If that's why you're fighting, now I understand. It's always a misunderstanding when superheroes fight. He goes, Odin's a sky god. I'm a sky god. We have the same influences. We have the same interests, and we will protect each other's realms. So, you are a noble fighter. I understand now why you're fighting. That only works in comic books. He goes back to say goodbye to Aeneas, and he flies away, and he's going to the woods, and he's like, hey, here comes Loki. He's like, what happened? Loki's like, you know what? I went through a cave. I got some mist. I forgot who I was, and I met some nice people. And, it turns out they're in a war, and I was talking to them all, and I gave them an idea. Da-da-da-da-da-da. So Loki whispered into the ears of Odysseus and gave him the idea for the Trojan horse. And I am convinced that Roy Thomas came up with this ending and worked backwards through the whole story. Now I'm going to go back and read the comics. I was on a roll. I considered Odin the most powerful hero since they had Odin lead his own hero team when he was young. Okay, yeah, okay. I'm not going to argue with that logic. This episode of John's Long Box brought by the letter C for coffee and the number 9. Why? Yeah. Every episode is brought by if you're going to go by that, every episode of John's Long Box, the Sunday Comics edition, is brought by coffee. Without, I'm a different person before I have my coffee. Because if that's how he's dipped it, yes, the river Styx. Pete Rock. Hey, Pete, good to see you. In today's Marvel, Zeus and Thor would end up at a coffee shop with their laptops discussing their feelings. Yes. Because, I can't even think of a joke, but yeah, you're right. Mark Boyd. Good to see you, Mark. As a kid in the late 70s, John B's work went over my head. Reminded me of Prince Valiant or something. I appreciate it much more now. I think I liked his brother Sal more back there. Okay. You know what's funny? Now that you're making me think about this, Mark, is when I was a kid, like I said, I didn't really pay attention to the names too much. I paid attention to John Byrne and I paid attention to George Perez. If I saw their names, I got their comics. The writers I didn't pay attention to yet at this point. I was too young, but Sal Buscema and John Buscema, I just saw the name Buscema and they became the same person to me. And I don't think my eye was astute enough to pick up the differences between the two artists. And because of the inkers, so John Buscema could look vastly different depending upon the inker. So I never realized that they were different people. Stupid kid. What do you want me to say? A few ounces of Troy. So here's they didn't have a letters page, so Roy Thomas wrote an article. And this is the making of it, how Don and Maggie Thomas influenced their creation of this particular comic. And here's the most interesting thing. Roy Thomas already promised a sequel to this. He promised that the next Thor Annual would be Thor going back and meeting Aeneas again and talking about the Aeneid. So for those of you who do not know, there was the Iliad and the Aeneid. And the Aeneid is the story of how... and why can't I remember who? I think it was Virgil wrote the Aeneid. How Thor met and befriended Aeneas. Aeneas is one of the people who survived the destruction of Troy, got on a ship and flew down into Italia, and that his descendants had Romulus and Remus. So it was, what was that? That was Virgil retroactively inserting Rome into Greek mythology. So it was hundreds of years later. I don't know the exact time scale. So there's the Iliad, which is the story of the Trojan War. The Odyssey, which is, I love the Odyssey more than I love the Trojan War because it's all monsters and everything. The Odyssey is a Odysseus or Ulysses, depending upon if you want to do the Roman or Greek version. Odysseus getting on his ship and going back home, and it took him 10 years. So Odysseus was gone for 20 years. according to the stories about how getting home. And if you watch Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a retelling of the Odyssey. You know, John Goodman is the Cyclops. You got the sirens who loved them up and turned them into a toad. At the end, there's the great flood that solves everything. That's Poseidon getting involved. And remember, his name is Ulysses, George Clooney's character. Did Howard the Duck ever fight Dracula? Uh, I don't know, but they were always in the ads together. And as a kid, I didn't like Dracula because that was, Dracula. I didn't like anything that wasn't created by Marvel being inserted into Marvel. So I didn't like Godzilla. I didn't like the Shogun Warriors. Star Wars never really interacted with them. But I like the Micronauts. But then again, I was introduced to the Micronauts by Marvel Comics before the toys. So there you go. No, but that would have been good. I hated Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck was wacky, zany, but political satire, which I didn't appreciate as a kid. So there you go. It wasn't made for the little kids. It was made for the older Marvel fans. I like Howard the Duck now, and believe it or not, I've never seen the Howard the Duck movie. So as I was saying, there was the Iliad, which was the story of the Trojan War, the Odyssey, which was Odysseus returning home, which is just filled with monsters. And how can you not like the Odyssey? I like it so much better. And then the Aeneid, which was Aeneas's journey from Troy to Italia, and then the how he became the I don't know the grandfather or great grandfather or whatever ancestor to Romulus and Remus, the legendary mythological founders of Rome. Great stories. Now, they weren't written. Homer is like the Shakespeare of ancient Greece. But did he really create these stories? No, these stories existed in some form, and then blind Homer, did he really exist? I don't even know if he really existed. That now I'm going all historical on you, but he's credited with them of like codifying them. But a lot of people say that they weren't really written by the same person because the Iliad is about Minoan Greece. It's about gods and heroes and adventure and going overseas and honor and all of this great stuff that the Greeks like looked at the past. But the Odyssey is a different period. They had to have been like I think I remember my professors telling me that they were 800 years apart. Who am I? Maybe my memory's playing tricks on me, but the Odyssey is about going home. So think of this. The Iliad is about anti-family. It's my wife left me, and now there's destruction and war. It's about how whatever. But then the Odyssey is Ulysses going home to Penelope. It's two completely different sentiments. It's the Odyssey is a later period, a classical period of home life, of domestication, whereas the Iliad is about like savageness and uncivilized times and conquering and glory, and then the Odyssey is the exact opposite. Home is the important thing. Getting home, the family, the loyalty. Even Odysseus's dog, whose name escapes me, and his son, and getting home to his wife. So two completely different opposite ends of Greek mythology. And then the Aeneas, it was just created like, I don't know, 1,000 years after the Odyssey, the Iliad, about it's the Romans inserting themselves into Greek mythology. So, okay, inkers could affect the artist. Think about, yes. The inkers could completely change the artist. I agree. That's why I kind of got John Buscema and Sal Buscema mixed up in my head. Random fact, a character called Mr. King, a comic book artist, is episode of the 2000 Ninja Turtles cartoon. Oh, cool. I don't have any comic books featuring the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I know Tonic Mole is very upset about that. He's a big Ninja Turtles fan. They came out, I was like angry about the Ninja Turtle. They're making fun of comic books, and I never got them. I had the first issue in my hand, first print, and I never bought it. I've tried to, through Joyce's Ulysses a few times. Yes. James Joyce famously said that it took him 20 years to write the Ulysses, and it'll take you 20 years to read it. I've never tried. I have a copy of it. I went through my highfalutin pretentious period, and I bought all of those novels, bought all the classic literature. They're all on my bookshelf to this day, and I have never attempted to read Ulysses. James Joyce. I worked with a couple of guys from Ireland, and they're like, "Oh, you got to read Joyce. You got to read Joyce," and I never did. Never did. I bought the book, never read it. So, any last comments before I close out? I've been talking for an hour. My mouth is killing me. I can't believe I've been talking for an hour. I love this comic. I don't know. 1979. What grade was I in? I don't even know. So I was 11 years old. 11. So I was in sixth grade. Yes, sixth grade when this came out. I loved this comic. I still love this comic. I got nostalgic just looking through. It's funny because as of last night when I laid down to bed, I didn't know what I was going to do today, and as I was falling asleep, I was like, oh. This is the only choice. I absolutely love this comic. Bye, Mark. Bye, everybody. I'll 20 more seconds. If anybody wants to say anything, I'm going to close it out. It's really great. I got nope. Goodbye and hail. Oh, thanks, Bucky. So Marvin, I'm going to put a link to Marvin's comics in here. Got to help a guy out. I like his comic. He's a good guy. He's been on my channel. I'm trying to promote goodwill. I'm trying to promote peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Merry Christmas, everybody. Razzleberry dressing. But why not? Why not? There's too much infighting in the comic book world. Another person's success does not take away from me. So what? Oh, Fabio. You know what? I'm going to put a link to Alterna Comics. Got to support Fabrizio. Marvin, I got to support. Arthur is a great guy. Arthur, for those of you who don't know, he worked for Stan Lee. He knew all these guys. He knew Jack, Stan. He was a woodchuck, a term that I didn't know until I met Arthur. The woodchucks were the people that went around and, like, on Long Island, they would go to Manhattan, and Stan would give him like a ticket. Go to Jack Kirby's house, pick up the art. And Arthur would take the ticket, take the train over to where Jack Kirby lived, pick up the art, have a sandwich with Rosalind and Jack, and then go back, give Stan the art. Okay, now go to Gil Kane's house. So Arthur met all of these people. How the stories Arthur could tell. I had lunch with Arthur a few times. I really enjoyed it. But okay. I was just stalling to see if anybody wanted to say anything. But thanks a lot, guys. I'm having so much fun. I haven't said this in a while, but I appreciate all of you. Pete Rock, who's in the comments. He was one of the early subscribers, one of the first people. Matter of fact, I think Pete was the first person I told that I was going to do this channel. And he was like, that's a good idea. So thank you, Pete. And then Pete helped me do live chat technology and realized that I could do this stuff. I thought it was all beyond me. Jeff Hatcher was just on. He's one of my early subscribers. And I felt bad for Jeff because he got bumped a few times because other people were like, I could only talk at this particular time. So, but it only made his stack of comics get bigger and cooler. But Jeff, if you want to come back on and talk about the rest of your comics, Pete, if you ever want to come, Pete did a wonderful, wonderful live chat about Daredevil. And I felt bad because he did his homework and he was all ready to talk about Daredevil, and then I was like, go, and I showed a Fantastic Four Annual, and he was like, ah. So I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was nervous. I'm blaming nerves for all of my mistakes. But anyway, now I'm rambling. There's rants, which are me politically charged, and there's rambles when I just talk about nothing. But thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks a lot, Jeff. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video. Bye bye.